call the May 10th meeting of the Waxahachie Groves Planning and Zoning Committee to order. If we could have a roll call, please.
Chair Dennis Lipp,
Present.
Vice Chair Robin Crawford, absent. Board members Lawrence Corning,
Present.
Board member Keith Harris,
Here.
Board member Grace Joyce,
Here.
and alternate number 1, Veronica Close.
Here.
Also present is Town Manager Mark Cutney, Office Coordinator Steve Hainline, Town Planner Jim Fleshman, and sitting in for Mike Cirillo is Jacob Horowitz.
Okay, with the absence of a flag to say the pledge, let's just take a moment of silence and then we will get into the minutes. Okay, can I have a motion to approve the agenda, please?
I'll make a motion to approve the agenda.
Okay, Grace?
Second.
You're sitting in? Okay, okay, we have a motion by Grace, seconded by Veronica. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign, so the motion, the agenda is approved. Okay, just let me sort of set the ground rules for the meeting. Tonight, we will first hear from staff. Then anyone who chooses to make a public comment, get your comment cards in before staff finishes. Then we'll hear from the public, and then we'll bring it back to the board, and we'd like to hold a 2 or 3 minute limit on this. I'm glad we got a short meeting tonight, short-looking meeting tonight. Because we got a little out of hand in our last one, so I'm going to try to keep those rules in force, and if Steve could keep time for us, that would be good. So we will start with local planning agency, item 5A, amendment to the Waxahachie Groves Unified Development Plan, Unified Land Development, LDC, to add Article 41, Planning and Development. Mr. Flashman.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Both of these items, 5A and 5B, are considered amendments to the ULDC,
Okay.
which means that they are to be reviewed by the local planning agency. And per our code, the only advertising requirements that we need at this point is a post notice at the town administrative complex, which did occur on time.
Okay.
I'm going to have to apologize. I had a PowerPoint presentation for the PUD ordinance. It's on here. For some reason, the computer can't read it, so I'm going to go through it verbally, and then we can answer any questions or address any questions after that, if that's okay.
All right.
As I mentioned, the proposed PUD ordinance is an amendment to the town's Unified Land Development Code. And for the purposes of reviewing the ULDC amendments, we have to go through and address 4 basic questions and answer them positively in order to justify the change to the text of the end goes in just a minute. The need for the PUD ordinance initially arose as a result of the creation of the multiple future land use category, then its assignment to the 2 large parcels at the northwest and northeast corners of V Road and Southern Boulevard. These parcels needed design flexibility to implement town planning directives and conditional approval not available in the ULDC. And as a result, the multiple land use, or the PUD, is being brought forward to primarily to implement the multiple land use category designations. Multiple land use, future land use category can only be assigned to parcels that are at least 50 acres in size and located along Southern Boulevard. However, the PUD ordinance as it's currently drafted can also be applied to other properties in town at the discretion of the council.
Jim, I don't mean to interrupt.
Sure.
Please tell me you're not going to read this whole thing.
No, no.
Okay, thanks.
Any
I have a couple sessions on, but I have.
And also,
to read
we've
just to
been
make sure
asked that
I
you
didn't
speak
get-
up.
Okay.
Next to the audience, unfortunately,
Yeah, the PUD is actually a floating overlay district, which will not appear on the town zoning map unless and until it's actually assigned to a particular property by the town council. The applicant for the proposed PUD is the town of Waxahachie Roads. As I mentioned earlier, there are 4 basic criteria that need to be addressed in order to justify a text amendment to the Unified Land Development Code. The first is a reason and or need for the proposed text change. And as I said, the primary purpose of the PUD is to implement the multiple land use, future land use designation, and as drafted by staff, can be applied to other parcels at the discretion of the council. The multiple land use, or the PUD ordinance, also will provide additional opportunities to implement comprehensive plan directives as well as directives of other town special planning studies. The second criterion is there a reason the present text of the ULDC is invalid or appropriate? The current text is not necessarily inappropriate, however, the PUD does provide greater flexibility to address comprehensive planning directives and other town planning directives. Third criterion is, does the proposed text amendment further the purposes of the comprehensive plan or other town codes, regulations, or plans designated to implement the comprehensive plan? We have gone through the comprehensive plan and identified 17 policies in the comprehensive plan which are supportive of the PUD ordinance, primarily in the future land use element, transportation element, recreation and open space element, and the conservation element. In addition to the comprehensive plan, the town does have several additional special planning studies which the PUD ordinance can assist in implementing, including the MRAC, which is the Master Roadway Equestrian and Greenway Plan, the State Road 7, or State Road 80, Southern Boulevard Conceptual Access Management Plan, and the Rural Vista Guidelines. The final criterion, is there an error or ambiguity to be corrected? And we have identified no errors or ambiguities in the current ULDC. Based on our application of the 4 criteria, staff concludes that the criteria for amending the ULDC to include the PUD have been met. Staff findings, planning staff finds the proposed PUD ordinance to be generally consistent with the intent and direction of the Waxahachie Grove Comprehensive Plan and the review criteria for a text amendment listed in section 160-020 of the ULDC. And staff recommends approval of the proposed PUD ordinance as it is presented in attachment A of the staff report. This is where I did have the PowerPoint presentation, but I just had a few slides, and I think I can go through and summarize what I had on the slides without any loss of understanding or content.
You give us way too much credit.
The PUD ordinance is a proposed addition to the town's Unified Land Development Code and will be added as Article 41. It will only apply to properties with an MLU, multiple land use, future land use designation, or non-residential future land use designation, either an MLU or other non-residential future land use designations. I'd like to run briefly through the major provisions of the ordinance and then open it up to some questions. The purpose of the PUD is to provide a zoning vehicle to implement the town's recently adopted MLU future land use category and to provide other property owners with a non-residential land use designation the option to gain approval for development concepts to implement the comprehensive plan of the town's various supplemental plan documents. The PUD concept will provide benefits both to the town and property owners in that it will allow discussions of and resolution of specific issues during the zoning process and prior to the site plan approval process. In addition, it will allow multiple property owners to cooperate in developing a unified development plan for their properties. Approval of a PUD application will be a rezoning and be so indicated on the town's official zoning map. A PUD without an MLU future land use designation will include an underlying town zoning district, either CL, CLO, institutional and public facilities, parks and recreation, and conservation. And as an example, if a property that has a CL zoning designation and gains PUD approval, the designation on the zoning map will then be CL/PUD. So the underlying zoning district will be reflected along with the PUD designation on the zoning. Applications for an underlying zoning designation and PUD approval may be simultaneously applied for and approved. If a property has, for example, a commercial future land use designation, the property owner may apply for a commercial zoning district and PUD designation simultaneously. PUD uses will be limited to those multiple land use uses and intensities allowed by a special policy in the comprehensive plan or in the underlying zoning district for properties without an MLU future land use designation. The town may apply conditions of approval to a PUD to ensure compliance with the comprehensive plan and its special planning studies, ensure off-site road improvements, the dedication of public facilities, compatibility between land uses, and quality development. A PUD approval and any imposed conditions will run with the land and be binding upon all successors with an interest in the property. So once a PUD is applied to a parcel, it will run with the land regardless of whether or not the property is sold or is transferred in the future.
Jim, if I may interrupt.
Sure.
Could you just explain to everybody in layman's terms what a PUD buys somebody? I'm not using that word derogatorily, just what it gives them, as opposed to being just commercial law. What's commercial law PUD do?
Yeah. It allows, well, first of all, one of the benefits is the fact that the town right now has three basic approval processes: a land use designation, zoning designation, and site plan approval. The town has three basic approval processes: future land use designation, zoning, and site plan approval. The site plan approval process, as it is currently written, is a very exhaustive, expensive process, and there are many opportunities for changes in the site plan to be made during the site plan approval process, which requires considerable expense and changes to some of the detailed documents. The PUD process as an interim step in between zoning and site plan approval, and that's essentially the approval of a master plan which addresses most of the major land use issues prior to getting into the site plan approval process. So it gives the town the opportunity to get involved and comment and make recommendations on a development concept at the time of the zoning process. And also gives the applicant the opportunity to present more generalized plans where issues can be resolved and dealt with in the zoning process, as opposed to having to wait to the site plan approval process where it becomes a very expensive proposition. Now, we are, the PUD process as it applies to multiple land use designation provides the opportunity to develop a conceptual master plan on a property that essentially has been assigned very general use and intensity designations in the comprehensive plan. The application of the PUD to other land use categories, such as commercial, it gives the opportunity for smaller property owners than 50 acres that, and also multiple property owners the opportunity to join together to come up with a conceptual master plan covering either an individual property or multiple properties. Now, as part of the PUD process, we are offering the availability of waivers to the land development regulations, provided that certain objectives of the comprehensive plan and the land development regulations are complied with, giving them the opportunity to potentially provide a more quality development than could be attained under the current land development regulations. So the reason why we have an underlying zoning district is so that the basic uses in that district must be complied with, and the basic intensities of development must be complied with as well. But we're giving property owners a little design flexibility to better implement town planning directives than we think are currently available in the current ULDC as it is written. Does that answer your question?
Yes, it answers that, plus a few more things that I hadn't thought about asking, but I'm sorry for the interruption, but I appreciate it.
No, that's okay. I mean, let's tackle the questions as they come up, as we're discussing it. That's no problem. As I said, one of the other benefits of the town is that it gives the town council the ability to attach conditions of approval at the zoning stage as opposed to waiting to the site plan approval stage. For example, if the town has a CL zoning designation, there are very specific black and white criteria that need to be applied to a parcel in order to go to site plan approval. Now, depending upon where the property is, there could be additional planning directives such as the location of the horse trails, extra need for buffers between uses, the need for connectivity between parcels that aren't necessarily addressed by the current ULDC. It gives the town council the added flexibility to add conditions of approval into the master plan that will address some of those extra planning issues. And as I said before, the PUD approval, including any conditions of approval, will run with the land regardless of the future ownership. Even though an applicant receives PUD approval, including master plan approval, that does not relieve him of his responsibility to proceed through the development process and obtain site plan approval in the future and any additional town mandated development approvals. As I said, a PUD remains subject to the town's land development regulations as well as any additional limitations imposed by special policies in the comprehensive plan or conditions of approval imposed by the town council. And as I mentioned, it's possible for an applicant to request waivers to some of the specific land development regulations. However, in order to receive approval of a waiver, the applicant has to show how it meets the design objectives of a PUD that are listed in section 3A of the PUD ordinance. And those are fairly restrictive criteria which have to be met to the council's satisfaction in order to receive a waiver. The following are the major planned unit development performance standards. A PUD must have frontage on and legal access to a designated arterial roadway. And at this point, that's only Southern Boulevard. We had similar language in the multiple land use, future land use category, and the council had us change that language from arterial roadway to Southern Boulevard, so that there was no doubt as to where the developments could be located, and also to prevent the future designation of another roadway in town as an arterial. The town council wanted the multiple land use projects located along Southern Boulevard, so we changed arterial roadway to Southern Boulevard, which we sort of implemented here. The second performance standard is that traffic improvements shall be provided to accommodate projected traffic impacts as determined by the town council. And the identified improvements will be provided according to a schedule approved by the town council. Number 3, cross access shall be provided to adjacent properties where possible and deemed appropriate by the town. Number 4, internal circulation systems will be designed in a manner to not adversely impact drainage on adjacent properties. Number 5, a bus stop shall be provided unless a written statement is received from contrary to the contrary. Number 6, utilities shall be located, utilities that are located in utility easement shall be located underground with some specific identified exceptions. And number 7, perimeter buffer requirements shall apply to the exterior boundaries of the PUD as opposed to each of the internal boundaries of individual lots or pods. Now, that accounts for developments that will have more than one lot. For example, a development that has out parcel uses. the buffering requirements will not be applied around each of the individual small lots, rather they will be applied around the entire planned unit development concept. And as I said, as part of the PUD approval, a master plan is required. The master plan will become the principal development regulations of the PUD. All future plans and approvals must be consistent with and based upon the master plan approval. The master plan application requirements are listed on pages 7 through 9 of the proposed ordinance. And I won't go through those at this point unless there's any specific questions on them. And finally, we have made provision for administrative amendments to master plan based upon a recommendation by the town's newly formed development review committee. And these administrative amendments may be made by the town manager based upon the recommendation of the ERC. However, the changes cannot result in a change in use or an increase in development intensity. Those kinds of changes cannot be administratively approved. They've got to be approved process. That's a brief run-through. I figured that we probably should spend most time on answering specific questions.
We'll take the board questions once we get past. I guess we only have one comment from the public, and this is asked to be read into the record. You have another one?
Yeah, one that I was gonna speak, I just didn't have, I didn't realize we were finished.
Virginia Standish, 15410 North Road, asked this to be read into the record on agenda item 5A. Concerned about PUD will be applied to other parcels. In the 70s, multiple homes were built on 5-acre lots. Also, the
Phrase,
what was that again? Wording?
the phrase creative use of land and result in quality development.
Okay, for the creative use of land and result in quote-unquote quality development leaves town wide open to developers. Care to comment on that? Is that?
Sure. Well, first of all, any PUD is limited to a property that has frontage on Southern Boulevard at this point. And as part of the master plan process, we have a whole series of criteria, including design standards and requirements for buffers and development intensities that are going to be reviewed during the process. So I think that we have adequate provisions in the PUD as it's written to make sure that those issues are addressed during the approval process, and if necessary, the town council has the ability to impose conditions of approval on the master plan. Over and above the ability that it currently has under the current zoning portion of the ULDC to ensure that development occurs in a manner consistent with the character of the town.
All right. Any other public comments? Seeing none, we will.
I just got a question. Are we getting to ask comments after?
No, public comments are being accepted now. Then we're going to bring it back to the board, and then the board will vote. We're only having one opportunity for public comments tonight. This is 5A. We'll have public comment then available on 5B, so that we can keep this fairly well structured. Virginia Standish again, I wish to speak this time. Good. Okay.
Virginia Standish, 15410 North Road. I believe this is part of 5A regarding policy 1.2.4 regarding Tangerine Drive from 161st Terrace. Is that correct? I don't wish to speak.
Yeah,
on
that's
it.
in your.
Okay, I'd like to comment on that item. I was under the understanding in the comprehensive plan that it was a suggestion, not a mandatory thing. My concern as a resident is I'm very concerned that 161st Street and eventually 161st Terrace will become a cut-through for the new Calvary Judge Grove Town, as Orange Grove Boulevard borders the north end of Loxahatchee Groves and ties it very nicely to 101st Street. I'm sure everyone on the planning zoning board is aware of that. And that's my concern, is that that will simply become a cut-through for the town of Calvary Judge Groves. And we've been trying to make this a community in the town for the residents, not a cut-through for everybody else. Thank you.
Okay. You care to address that?
Yeah. The comprehensive plan does have language in it that encourages citrus tangerine to be extended across the entirety of the town, north of Southern Boulevard. However, there's a land use plan amendment that's in process now on the Simon property, which is on the west side of Reed Road, which will allow access from Reed Road into the college, but not continue access all the way across to the western border of the town. So that won't occur.
Yeah,
If these in-process amendments are approved.
and we can address these later, because I share the same concern. Nina Corning,
I have quite a
name
few
and
comments.
address, please.
Nina Corning, I'm sorry, apologize, 2834 E Road. I have quite a few comments, so I'm going to try to cut it down a bit, because I find this whole document somewhat ingenuous. It speaks, first of all, in reference to it only being on Southern, on paragraph 3 of the background information, it specifically says that it can be applied to other properties in town at the discretion of the council. So that makes it applicable elsewhere. I also would just like to understand how, when we have right now, we need supermajority from the council for changes to the ULDCs, and we need supermajority from the council for changes to the comp plan. If this is adopted into the comp plan as a PUD, does that, when someone is trying to develop one of our commercially zoned properties, does that still require a supermajority in order to apply the PUD overlay? There are several things in there that are just hair-raising. I don't
Don't say
know.
hair raising to a call.
I apologize, I'll bring you away next time.
We're all right.
No, just kidding. I don't know where to start. I can't sit here and talk for a half an hour, but
You got 3 minutes.
it's just, you can start with, you have a choice of providing a little island of native trees or a buffer or a trail. What kind of trail? It's not disclosed. Things like that. It is all over the place. It is weak. We are having a problem already with a weak comp plan. Now we're creating an even weaker PUD document. It's with we have town shall promote the development of multi-use trails, whatever that means. Multi-use trails. I don't know whether those are pushing strollers or what they are. You're required the provision of natural areas, land buffers, or trails. You are encouraged joint use. You are encouraged connectivity among all new developments in order, and it doesn't even say that it needs to be adjacent if you're trying to encourage the,
If you could please summarize.
basically, it is a document that encourages further development, and potentially not just along Southern but elsewhere as well. It certainly encourages further development along Southern, where now you could have several property owners that come together and say, oh, you know what? Let's go and do one of these PUD overlays on that particular property. The whole idea with us incorporating was to protect this area, not to make it easy for developers to come in and make their little plans for us. Thank you.
Jim, would you care to respond to that?
Yeah. First of all, a property has to have frontage on Southern Boulevard. Pure, that's end of story. It can't go anywhere else if it does not have frontage on Southern Boulevard. And secondly, I think most of those items that you were quoting are right out of the comprehensive plan in my staff report. That's not part of the PUD. So all I did was cite comprehensive plan language that supports the adoption of the PUD ordinance.
Okay, I'll bring it back to the board. We'll start, Veronica, do you want to?
Well, I would rather listen to the regular board members' comments. I have comments, but I have no problem.
Let me go first? Okay.
Yeah. Vote from Grace Joyce first.
First, I would like to thank Mr. Fleischman for taking the time to indulge me. I met with Jim and we went over this because I had a lot of concerns when I read it the first go around. And he was very gracious in taking the time to explain to me some of the things. And he actually did, I think, a really good job based on what other communities are doing as far as requirements. Currently, the town doesn't have any procedures for waivers or variances for that matter. So this actually gives the town an additional tool in its toolbox to create something, and I hate to use the word restrictive, but more restrictive than flat out zoning would. Because if someone comes in for the PUD, the town can say, okay, well, we want to make sure that you do this, and we want to make sure you add that. And none of that could be in the comp plan or in the zoning that we have currently. So it's giving the town a tool to actually move forward with the vision that is not clear in our comp plan right now, nor is it necessarily clear within our zoning regulations. So that's a plus. Of everything that we talked about, I really only have one question for Mr. Fleischman and a small little concern, and that's pertaining to the administrative amendment section.
What does it say?
The section D is on page 15, where it talks about the town manager may administratively approve amendments, which is good, because you don't want to have to take everything back through the process all over again. I just wish it was a little clearer, because where it says, I mean, it's clear you can't grant a change in use, that's clear, but, or an increase in development intensity. Dealing with developers, they're very crafty, and they can define development intensity any way they want to. So I think we really should have a percentage in there, maybe a building footprint percentage, or a floor area ratio percentage, or something, because if this is the site plan that's approved and there was a sign over here and they want to move it over here, then the town manager should be able to say, yep, you can do that, it has no negative impact on anything. But if they want to tear this building down over here and take the same amount of square footage and put it over here, I think that's not the intent of the original master plan approval. So I think I would ask that you just tweak a little bit more. But I thought there's a lot of really important safeguards in here. And most importantly are the conditions of approval. I think that's a great tool for the council to have, and developers know in advance, you can come in and ask what you want, but we're gonna get what we want through these conditions of approval. So, that's it.
Okay, when we're talking about intensity of the development, that really refers back to the approved density on the master plan. But what you're saying is that if a master plan consists of several phases or pods, that we not necessarily allow them to transfer all or even some of the intensity off of one pod and load it up onto another.
Right, that could happen.
Okay, so we need to have some language in there that pretty much restricts development intensity also to the locations
Yes,
where it's been approved on the master plan.
that would work.
Okay.
Yeah, probably something in there as long as it's consistent with the master plan.
Yeah.
The term pod is referring to something within the pod.
Correct.
Yeah.
Pods and pods.
Yeah, or phase.
Or phase.
Okay.
Thank you, Grace. That was some good comments. Lawrence?
There are no members of the press here, is that correct?
We still don't use any footage.
Right, yeah, we try to stay safe. This was town initiated. Who in the town initiated it?
Staff?
You initiated it. You initiated it? Who in the town initiated it?
Well, I guess you can probably say I did, because we had to have this in order to implement the multiple future land use designation.
So you just decided to initiate it? I'm just clarifying this, is that correct?
Yeah, I guess you could say that.
So you assigned yourself work to bring a PUD forward?
No, I didn't assign myself work. That was all part of the implementation of the two multiple land use designations at B Road.
Okay, so during your work on B Road, on either side of the road, you felt what?
The town's ULDC did not provide a vehicle to zone and implement those two developments.
So you decided to bring a PUD forward? When you're basically paid on a sort of per job basis, I mean, don't you go in front of the council and are approved for certain work?
No,
How does that work?
almost all of my work is paid for by escrow deposits for applications.
So you're paid by the developer through an escrow deposit?
If I could interrupt here,
Are you
Lawrence.
going to answer my question?
No, I'm not. This is the job of the chair. Taking the task of staff over a money issue is not what the job of this committee is. I think
I'm just trying to get an idea of how this originated and what, if there's a.
I don't think that's really our purview here. I think it's something that certainly the town council bring up, because they do have fiduciary responsibility to the committee, to the community. Whereas our responsibility is to hear planning and zoning issues, give our recommendation to the town council as far as whether to accept or deny them.
Okay.
A discussion, although, certainly maybe in order, is not in order for this bill. it would be something that I recommend that you bring to the town council.
All right, so let's see there. Okay, Development Review Committee, the DRC, this is new,
Yes.
and could you please explain that to us? When was this formed and who are they?
I believe it was just formed last month. And it was formed by ordinance of the town council. And it consists of staff and any other review and permitting agencies that are necessary to be brought in on a specific project.
So how would that relate to this, for example, the Beaver project? Either side of the Beaver.
How would it relate to the?
Yeah, well, how would this Development Review Committee is staff, which would be you and,
Maybe the town manager could answer that
Yes.
better.
Let me just give you the genesis of the committee and what has transpired. As the staff started to review the applications that were filed by both the college and the developers of the commons, it occurred to the staff, and when I say staff at that point in time, I think we were talking with the town attorney, myself, Mr. Fleischman, our consulting engineer, Mr. Figueroa, Mr. Sanye of the Water Control District. We were all reviewing how, in a comprehensive global manner, these applications were going to be reviewed. Now, DRCs are not uncommon. Most cities have them. Many cities will have them address all types of development issues, from site plan, rezoning, you name it. What we did is we limited our development review committee in terms of just plats and site plans. As you may be aware, the town has an interlocal agreement with Palm Beach County. The county reviews all building permits. The town reviews planning and zoning. We took that responsibility on in 2011. When you take that responsibility on, you have to have a vehicle to take it from the approval of town council administratively through direct staff and through all the way to building permits. So we needed to have a committee of our consultants, of, for example, representatives from Palm Beach County Sheriff's Office, fire rescue, anybody that we need to adequately review a site plan or plat as it's coming through the process. They would review it. It was adopted by resolution. I know some folks believe it should have been an ordinance, and I'm in agreement with them. At some point in time, we will memorialize it into the code as an actual ordinance, but for the purposes of this development, to try to be able to be ready to address the issues as they come forward, we did it by resolution. The committee will meet when it gets far enough from the standpoint of a site plan and or plat.
so did you also take on building and zoning as well in the local?
There may be some building aspects that will be
building
reviewed, but not from a building permit standpoint. You're talking from the standpoint after the zoning approval by the town council, it would be all the land development regulation aspects that would apply, including the landscape review, access to roadways and those kinds of things.
Now, the PUD allows them to subdivide inside and sell off, that's correct?
Yes.
And the extra control you say you would have would be exercised prior to them selling it off?
Yes.
So you would approve everything, and then they would get to sell it off?
Yes.
Okay.
I believe is where the master plan, situates through.
I mean, basically PUDs came in after World War II, right? Levittown, and all these wonderful, and we tried to get away from PUDs, right? I mean, that back in, probably what inspired the two ladies at the other end was Jane Jacobs, who pushed against this particular type of activity, yet you know, seem to bring this forward, and it's, the only reason they bring it forward is it's obviously more beneficial for them to have this particular device. Otherwise, they wouldn't bring it forward. Well, I mean, of course, they didn't bring it forward, you guys brought it forward, as you would say.
Yeah, well, as I said, I mean, it's a benefit to landowners and the town.
Well, I don't know if, I don't want to get into the specifics, because this came very quickly. And it's obvious that a town that formed to get away from Palm Beach County, even though we may be getting closer to Palm Beach County, really wanted rural. We don't really see anybody from the town. They don't show up, you know, and they don't show up at the council either. So you may have your way in the end anyway, and you probably deserve your way if no one shows up. And obviously, to deal with professionals on this, of this caliber, we would need, as individuals, to bring in the technicians that would be able to take this on point by point at our own expense. So we can't really, we don't have the time for this now. He's indicated we need to move quickly. And so
I did not say.
you didn't say we need to move quickly?
No.
Well, the last meeting was very long, and this one needs to.
Well, I just need to have better control over the meeting. That was my fault last time.
Okay. So, I mean, I would move that this be denied, basically on the face of it. I mean, PUDs are a very negative influence. It's obvious that this is a device declaring it has more control, that it has more control for our side of the table, I don't think is accurate. And I would, yeah, I know you do, and I
I
appreciate
disagree
it.
with them too.
I appreciate, I understand.
Are you making a formal motion?
I am, sir.
All right. So Lawrence, is that, restate your motion so we'll know where it is.
That we, you know, I moved to deny this PUD application.
Mr. Chair, just as a matter of procedure, this board is being asked to make a recommendation to the council.
To approve or?
So to either a favorable or unfavorable recommendation. So it essentially is a transmittal either way with this board's opinion after considering all the testimony analysis presented.
I would say unfavorable. Probably 5-1 again, but
It was 4-2 last time.
it wasn't 4-2.
There seems to be more discussion. I think we need a second before we can go on with the
Can we
session.
hear from everyone before we start making motions? Because
Is
I
that
don't
okay
think
with
some
you,
of us are
Lawrence?
prepared.
Yeah, that we go through and hear from everybody before we make motions? Okay, so let's hold on to your motion, and we'll hear from Keith.
And I have no comment.
Thank you, Veronica.
Well, I actually have a lot of comments. I didn't have the benefit of talking with Jim in advance, so I probably will have more comments than I would have had I done that. I kind of like the use of PUDs in certain applications. I think they do produce a better end result than just trying to adhere to a conventional zoning code. However, I firmly believe that there should be a minimum lot size, and it certainly shouldn't be an acre in my opinion. I think that is way too low to consider a PUD. I understand that we're going to allow people to accumulate properties or get together. I think that should be a very a formal arrangement, including declaration of covenants and whatever mechanism the town attorney recommends, to recognize a group of owners who want to come forth and apply. But I think it should be a minimum size, and it should be a pretty substantial size. I think it's a very good application for the MLU. I like it a lot for that. We're kind of dealing with an unknown there, and having a PUD would help. However, there's a number of things in the PUD that I have a concern about, and I actually think that there are some pretty good PUDs out there that we could use. I found one that I thought was very good. It is far more detailed than this and far more extensive, but I kind of look at it like we're a rural community. We want to stay rural, but we have some very savvy urban pressure coming our way. And I don't think we can respond with a rural ordinance, if you understand what I mean. I think it's going to have to be an ordinance that is going be the best that it can be, even though it might look like a book. It better be something that's gonna protect us and maintain the quality of life that we want. And it's gotta be, but it's gotta be at the level of the people who are putting pressure on us. So I found a few. I'm kind of inclined to think that maybe we ought to take a second look at this, because I think there's some work. So that's kind of my general comments. I appreciate everything that you put together, and like I say, I agree with the need for an MLU. And I didn't see anything in here that limited it to Southern. But,
Yeah, well,
so I might have just missed it? Or was it the comment that you made that they defined arterial as only Southern?
well, yeah, Southern is the only arterial in town now, and we probably should make that more specific. I'll strike arterial and put Southern in there. Now, on the issue of size, I did struggle with that, and I purposely left that out, so we could have some discussion here and to try to come to consensus. Now, as I said, the MLU minimum lot size is 50 acres. So I think there's only one other parcel under single ownership on Southern Boulevard that would qualify for that. If we want to give other property owners the opportunity to combine and apply under the PUD process, we need to come up with something less than 50 acres. But I agree that we shouldn't necessarily allow a CL parcel of 1 acre to apply for a PUD. So I mean, I totally agree that we need to come up with some minimum size. I wasn't sure in my own mind what that should be.
Well, maybe that would be something that we could look at, as we move forward with this, to come back with a recommendation as to size. I threw out 25 acres, but we need you to substantiate that, to come up with something that's defensible. The other, well, another major concern I had is it applies to everything non-residential. That means institutional public facilities, parks and recreation, and conservation. I had a real problem.
Okay, well, I mean, that's fine. That's fine as well.
Because I'm thinking along Southern, I'm thinking commercial, I think would make a great PUD. I can see a commercial development. I had a little trouble with the others. Not that I'm convinced that they shouldn't be in there, but I had a little trouble with them.
Yeah. One of the reasons why I included more than just the commercial designations is I know that there's been some talk about trying to create like a conservation area, preservation area along Southern Boulevard, not necessarily on the frontage, but with try to link some of the wetlands areas farther back that border more towards Collecting Canal. But those areas are owned by multiple property owners. So I included that category specifically to allow the potential for the property owners to get together and come up with some sort of conservation area or district or plan that might even include some walkways, horse trails, that kind of thing.
Without having to do a land use change.
Yes.
What does the comp plan say now about how those areas are to be protected?
Not much. I mean, they all have, there are some commercial properties on the frontage of Southern. All of the properties north of Southern, south of Collecting Canal, have the RR5 AR zoning, which means that they can be developed into 5-acre residential lots. The comprehensive plan, I don't believe has any language in it right now regarding the creation of a natural area in that area of the town. Now this PUD, I mean, it's kind of an unusual application for a PUD, but that could occur under this. I mean, it would be just passive recreation uses, maybe wetlands areas, trails, that kind of thing, not what you normally associate with PUD, but it could be done under this. And that's why I included all of the non-residential land use categories in it.
Well, I could possibly see its use. For example, I'm sure there are a lot of homeowners associations right now who are losing their golf courses that might have liked to have some other designation. Okay, I'm also a little clear. I heard mention that there's no variance provisions in the ULDC, and there are in fact some pretty good variance provisions in the ULDC, so, the ULDR, so I need to understand. I'm thinking there, that you would have to meet the underlying zoning regulations. So what are the waivers that you're discussing that you would not have to meet if you were assigned a PUD?
Well, I mean, there are several that could be applied for. The first one that comes to my mind is the size of the parking spaces. Now, at the meeting last month, there was some discussion about providing smaller parking spaces than the total allows at this point. The size of the parking spaces are designed primarily for fairly large trucks. And the town's consulting engineer was sitting next to me, and he started counting tiles. And he said that under the town's code, you can park 3 cars in this room. Now, you multiply that by the square footage of commercial developments, parking takes up, creates a lot of impervious area. And depending upon the use in the PUD, it may not require the provision of 100% of those large parking spaces. So that would give the applicant the provision to make a case for why, for example, maybe I can provide a certain number of the bigger spaces and a certain number of the smaller spaces and put them in a designated area, and as a result, create more pervious areas. Another example would be the setbacks and the around the outparcel uses. I mean, I think that's sort of covered by the provision that the setbacks and the buffers will go around the outside of PUD as opposed to being applied to individual lots. But there probably there could be some landscape provisions or some landscape requirements that an applicant wants to vary but still meet the intent. Like you might want to aggregate all of the open space over in an area and provide a little park, and need some relief in terms of the specific application of the landscape standards throughout the development. So I don't have a list of every provision that a waiver could be applied for. Now, I suppose we could come up with an additional list of items that cannot be waived.
I would feel more comfortable with that. The first 2 that you gave can and many times do result in increased intensity of use. Parking, minimizing the size of the parking. Parking is used in many communities to control the intensity of use. It isn't just the FAR. And so I can see where we might get more intense use by waiving some of these requirements. So I would be much more comfortable with a very specific set of things that could be waived or things that could not be waived, either one.
Well, the basic intensity is either set in the special policies in the future land use zone, or the FARs in the zone districts. And those FARs cannot be exceeded, and they can possibly be made more restrictive by conditions of approval in the PUD.
Well, they can't be, you can sometimes get more intensity by altering some of the other conditions of your approval. You may not get the maximum anyway, but you might get closer to the maximum
Yeah,
if you've got some things waived.
Sure, yeah.
So that's why I'm a little concerned about that. Hang on a second, let me see, in my notes.
Well, I guess one way that we could address that is to ask the applicant, okay, give me a plan assuming that you have to provide all large parking spaces. And then we'll give you a waiver to reduce them, but you can't exceed the amount of space that you would have gotten with the large spaces.
Or something along that line.
Number of spaces as opposed to size of spaces?
Well, either way, I don't think it's,
Well,
Yeah.
using both the number and
Yeah.
the size that you would have been required to provide.
Because if you still have the number, but the size is smaller,
Right.
you would still have the amount of parking you needed for the density of the project
Right.
Yes, but
without having as much, hardscape.
Yes, I was using the example of the size of the spaces.
Right,
I mean,
not number.
Right.
But the size of the spaces can result in having more, and so it bites you either way.
Yeah.
So,
Right.
I'm comfortable with phases. I think there should be time limits. There should be time limits on phases. It should be in the covenants. And I think that there should be a use it or lose it provision, that you lose your approvals if you haven't put them into effect. As far as amending the PUD ordinance, I do not agree with administrative amendments.
Do you think that,
Well, let me preface that. I think in a PUD ordinance, there should be preliminary application and final application. And I think that that procedure helps to minimize the amount of times it's coming back for approvals and so on and so forth. And you flush everything out through a preliminary application and work out all the bugs. Then you got them all in place, you've got your phasing, you've got all your final plans in place, you come back for final application. However, when it gets amended after that, I think administrative approvals should be very limited. I can see where there would be some benefit to having administrative approval, so the town council isn't sitting up there every month approving another amendment, but I think they should be very limited. I've got a lot of notes, sorry about that. Let's see.
Can I ask Veronica a question? Mr. Chair, can I ask Veronica a question?
Are you open for
Yeah,
questions?
sure, that's all right, rather than delay waiting for me.
You're beginning to reveal the details of the foibles of this particular plan or this particular venture, but when you were talking about the town council with the administrative approvals, wasn't it in here as the manager, the town manager?
yes, it is.
Yes, that was.
So not the council, the town council?
No, I think most.
Or were you suggesting a shift from the manager to the town council?
Yes, I think most changes, modifications to PUD should be taken to the town council.
Okay, because
Yeah, I could
what I
see-
read was the manager.
Yeah, and it is in there as the manager, and that was why I was expressing concern. I can see some limited ability that would be beneficial to everybody, that the town manager could approve, but I would think it would be limited.
Another question then, you feel that the PUD gives you more negotiating room. This is what I hear presented, and you feel, you agree that the PUD gives you more, that gives the town council more room to negotiate?
I think it does, but I think you have to be careful about not waiving everything. And that's why I have concern about the waivers. But yes, I do think it results in a better overall product. Now, this is a residential example, but the Breakers in Palm Beach is a PUD. It has very specific phases going all the way out to 2030. And it's a very effective vehicle. And it gets amended, not very often, but it does get amended as circumstances change. It takes a lot of circumstance to cause a change in the PUD, but it's a very effective one and has produced an excellent product. Of course, a lot of that should be attributed to the Breakers organization, but still, it's just a very good symbiotic relationship between the town and the Breakers. But again, that's a huge site, and I just can't see it being applied to small sites. It's just, I think it's just too unwieldy a vehicle to do that. But if you have larger sites, and commercial included, I think it's a very good one. And I'm looking at my notes, I don't see, I've got very specific notes, but personally, I think that I think there should be a significant amount of work done to this, to tighten it up. And I think it should be done at this level. I would like to see us defer it and work on it. I will be happy to submit something to you that I found that I think is a good example that you might be able to pull some elements from. It's much more specific, but again, we're in with the big guys now. We're not, we gotta think that way. Even though we don't wanna be that way, we have to think that way.
Another question. By agreeing to the PUD, you're agreeing to give the council more flexibility and hoping that they will negotiate a better deal.
There is always that concern that if you create a lot of waivers, you have established so much flexibility that two problems arise. One is the developer has no idea what he's allowed to do. That's a real concern. And that's a concern on the part of the town as well, because we're obligated to create a mechanism for a developer to have a reasonable certainty of what he can do and what he can't do. And the other one is that, of course, if it's too flexible, then you're dependent on the 5 people that are elected, and those 5 people may change 2 years down the road, and you might get an entirely different set of results. And so I think we need to build the PUD so that there is there's a mechanism in there for continuity between approvals. Let's put it that way.
So predictability, of course, is paramount in real estate. But have you seen the town council do any kind of negotiation of any significance with developers? The level of negotiation with developers versus sort of this open arm, and you want to extend them more?
I think it's incumbent upon the P&Z to work towards a very effective PUD ordinance that assures people that there will be continuity and that there will be a good product that comes out, and that the developer will know what they can do. I think that's our obligation, but I think that's the extent of our obligation.
What about a supermajority? There's a supermajority for the ULDCs. What about a supermajority for approval of PUDs?
I think it's in there already.
You have to have
A supermajority.
Yeah, it's in there
What
already.
is a rezoning,
Right,
which
that's right.
requires a supermajority?
Okay, so I missed that.
Right.
Jim, is it not true that, I'm sorry, were you done?
I got 2 more pages to go, let me just make sure.
I'm sorry.
I mean, I've got a lot of very specific notes, so I don't want to take up that time, but yes, I'm done. Can I reserve my what's that thing you, can I reserve my time to come back or something? No, I think I covered.
I'm going to yield to your
Yes.
time,
But isn't it true when a developer does come in to ask for a waiver? Number one, just because they ask doesn't mean they're gonna get it, but number two, don't they have to meet certain criteria that justifies that waiver? So it's not just a matter of ask and you shall receive, although that seems to be a theme sometimes. So I think it's important to note that you have to be able to justify the waiver that you're requesting.
That's true.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, may I add something to that? I found many references in here to saying, if the town council approves, or if the town council deems necessary, or if in the best interest of the town, very many very vague terms. I'm very uncomfortable with that, because that does lend itself to the council, even if they wanted to, not being able to say, well, or not having anything substantial on which to base a determination that it isn't appropriate. That concerns me. So I think we have to build into a PUD ordinance as many safety mechanisms as we can, so that the developer has to meet the standard and it's not a very vague, nebulous standard.
I think it'd be good if you could get, those recommendations to Mr. Fleischman.
Sure.
And possibly
I'd like to
So
you
how
can,
can,
through your office, then share those.
Sure.
how can we recommend this if we don't see these? I mean, my.
I would like to ask the town manager, could we see this again before it goes to the town council?
Well, quite possibly, especially if you don't act on it today. Obviously, it's got to come back to you.
Yeah.
If I can, Mr. Chair, can I make a comment?
Sure, certainly.
Hopefully this will help a little bit too. Just a comment about PUDs, because I could see where the board's a little hung up on the concept itself. And I agree with some of the comments that were made. I mean, a PUD is a suburban like development technique that really gained popularity after World War II. As suburbs started to develop, and they wanted to get away from the gridiron pattern of the development, so they tried to go ahead and come up with a technique that had flexibility. But I tell you, I'm familiar with three ways in which PUDs are normally applied. The first is as a rezoning by itself. It's its own zoning category, it stands on its own. Normally they're applied as a special exception in many areas. And the third way, which is the way we're doing it tonight, which I think Jim said to you earlier, we're actually applying it as an overlay zone. Now, when you apply it as an overlay zone, in my opinion, that's the best way to go, because when you look at overlay zones, the criteria, of course, are, first of all, they're mapped. But second, an overlay zone is putting another layer of regulation on top of the underlying zoning regs. So you're not tossing your underlying zoning regs out the door. What you're doing is you're adding the PUD on top of it. And if you have if there should be a conflict, the more restrictive regulation should hold. So what I would suggest to you in the review of this is that number one, you look at the purpose and intent of what this PUD is trying to do and see if you agree with that. If you don't agree with that, then there's an issue. And secondly, then look at all the regulations. The proof of the pudding will be in the regulations that were drafted, and if they're achieving what you would like to see achieved as part of that ordinance. And I think if you look at it that way, that might help you in terms of your decision.
Question.
Yes, Lawrence?
The more restrictive of the overlay takes precedence.
It should.
And my understanding in the PUD was that the PUD takes precedence. The language of the PUD takes precedence.
It should not wipe out every single regulation in the R1 zone category.
Yeah, but the phraseology is that the PUD is more restrictive, because in this language that we have in front of us, the language of the PUD takes precedence over the language of the ULDCs. Is that correct?
Chairman, thank you. One point, when the PUD is adopted by an ordinance, typically an ordinance will provide for conflicts. What that means is if an ordinance is adopted that conflicts with something that's previously been approved, the later in time adoption will prevail. So if this is adopted more recently and the ordinance contains that providing for conflicts language, any conflicting provisions will be essentially trumped by the newer document, by the new ordinance.
And that's the part that I'm reading, but I am taking that to mean that it's inclusive of the town manager's statement.
That's correct, to the extent that there is an actual conflict. If the PUD language is specifically conflicted with another provision in the ULDC, then the PUD would trump as the document adopted later in time. Keep in mind, this only lays the predicate for the creation of future planning developments. This isn't a PUD in and of itself, this just lays the underlying authority in the ULDC to establish a PUD in the future.
And my point was, you don't apply overlay zones to ease restrictions, they're applied to actually make it more restrictive or to achieve a goal that you're trying to do within a certain district. So that's when, if the PUD is actually is providing a series of regulations that are less restrictive than the underlying zoning, then they're not working as they should. That's why I said you go back to the purpose and intent though, because what Jill was telling you is the purpose and intent, it was giving you a development scenario, if you will, that would provide some flexibility to review things, not necessarily to throw away the codes and just make it a uniform, easier way to develop. That's not the intent.
So as a land use attorney, you're saying that the PUD is the more restrictive? Are you saying that, I just need to clarify that the PUD is the more restrictive? You're a land use attorney and you're saying that this PUD is more restrictive?
A couple points. First off, I'm not specifically the land use attorney, I'm a municipal attorney. We do deal with quite a bit of land use work. But I will specifically tell you that the ordinance that is adopted later in time, so if it is more restrictive,
I understand.
then it would conflict with something previously adopted. If it is less restrictive, there would also be a conflict, and then that would prevail. So it's not specific to what's more or less restrictive. It's whatever portion of the conflict is adopted later in time, the more recent document.
I'm just trying to get a commitment from either party as to which one is more restrictive.
But it's not necessarily a black and white issue. It depends on what the specific provision is and how the conflict is. If the conflict, say it this way, if the PUD document is more restrictive than another provision of the land development code, then the PUD document will prevail and the more restrictive provision will govern. If it is less restrictive, then the same would apply.
Remember what I said, you're focusing on the PUD, I'm focusing on the PUD as an overlay zone.
Right, I understand.
Okay, so that's the
That's
key.
the simplistic part, that's the simple part. Thank God we have a couple planners at the other end who are delving in free of charge on something that we would normally, I would say is, I wouldn't come near this thing with a 10-foot pole. And if they're gonna sit and take hours upon hours and vet every bit of it, and somehow prove to the people that it may approximate what the non-existent citizens wish.
Well, I think the thing, Lawrence, that we need to keep in mind is that this is not a PUD, what we're talking about today. This simply allows the town to use a PUD on certain, in order to have an overlay, which is more restrictive than just doing pell-mell zoning.
Right, and they come and they ask for the PUD and they get it with changes. They come and they ask for, you ask for 300 feet and you get later on they ask for a buffer and and then they ask and they get and ask and they get, and then you say, well, it's gonna be on Southern, but they're gonna come along and you're gonna talk to you, talk to him, and they're gonna get something presented. I mean, on and on.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just.
As far as the conflicts, I don't want to belabor it, but I want to make sure I understand. If the PUD overlay, which, Mark, I'm in total agreement with you. Personally, I think it should be more restrictive. That's why I'm concerned about the waivers. But in exchange for that, there's a lot of benefit to be derived. If the PUD has a provision in the PUD that says you must abide by the zoning requirements and X, Y, Z, and so on and so forth, then the PUD prevails because it agrees.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely right, yes.
If the PUD were to say, the PUD prevails, even though the zoning code says this, but specifically, the PUD says X, Y, Z, the PUD would still prevail, would it not? Because it specifically mentions that there is a provision in the code that says X, Y, Z, but we're saying in our PUD, A, B, C, so therefore, and we know that there's this X, Y, Z, but it's okay, A, B, C is gonna rule, then the PUD prevails.
I would agree that the PD is adopted with the same 2 public hearings, it's the same process, it's the same notice, it's the same posting, so, correct.
Right. So, again, as I say, I think the PUD should be more restrictive, and I think it should also have some carrots along with those sticks. And I think we'll get a better project. And I would like to defer this at a time when you
So
think the motion is in order.
Chairman, I'll withdraw the motion and modify.
Before you do, I just have one more comment.
Let's finish comment from the board.
I'm just wondering if it's the PD that we're getting hung up on, the fact that it's a PD, and traditionally, like Mr. Corning says, people have gotten in certain cities waivers of density and waivers of height, and they've actually gotten more than what they've given. While you're saying we can't do that here, because it specifically says we can't, what if, because we have to have zoning designation to allow for the next step for the folks who've already got the mixed-use land use comp plan amendments. What if it were just called, instead of a PDD, if that's our hang-up, it was a mixed-use zoning? And right now, we're suggesting that it be not only to the parcels that are along Southern, but if there's an opportunity for it to happen elsewhere, we should look at it. What if, and again, you know, whatever you guys feel comfortable with, what if it just at this point pertained to the mixed-use land use designation, as opposed to trying to open it up? And I think it could be a very creative tool that may happen in other instances, but I don't know that we're ready to go there yet. So, I mean, the goal is to try to let the folks who have that land use category move forward to their next stage, because they can't do that now. So maybe we need to really look at this, and I agree with Veronica, there are some things in here that could be beefed up a little bit, but for the purpose of the folks who already have that land use designation, they're in a hold pattern right now. They can't move forward because there's no zoning for them to go to. I just thought I would throw that out there.
You're putting,
Yeah, I need clarification of that. Aren't they in the process of going through are they really in a hold pattern? I thought they had a lot of work to do before they ever got to the point where. All right, that's the first question. The second one is, well, that's the only comment I have. I don't think that's, oh, and I would definitely not want to see it open anywhere else. And I do like it as an overlay. I would not like to see it as a separate zoning category. And I would like to see it restricted, as I said before, it's open to every non-residential. That causes me a little concern. I'm not totally opposed to it for that reason, because I can see the merits of it. But I would certainly not want it to be any more expanded than it is now. And I'd like to see a lot more restricted.
you're going to give the council more power to negotiate.
Should we wait until we're
That is giving the council more power to negotiate, right? Within the PUD framework gives you more.
I think a PUD has benefits of trade-offs. Whether it gives them more or something different, I don't know. I think it depends on how it's structured.
So let's look at the history. I mean, we have to rely on you to put in the details to protect us.
No,
The
town
town-
planner who does that.
Oh, please. Okay, well, you went through and parsed it. You went through it and found all the individual bits. She went through, found a whole bunch of individual bits. We have seen on Okeechobee, and we have seen here on Southern. Southern, the most urban of possible uses, like some of these universities. in a town where the people claim to want rural, agricultural, or at least one nice house and a big fat lot. You know, if nothing else, no chickens, no nothing. They still want something, you know, big and rural-ish, you know? And yet, we can't wait to welcome with open arms a prestigious university. You know, I mean, how are we to protect what the people say they want?
I think the next item addresses that.
I mean, you guys, come on.
I had a couple of questions, Jim, if I could. And this is, you know, let me get to the other areas. Okay, this is specifically on, this is page 7. Development order, E.
Page 7. Page 6.
You know, electronic is nice, but you know, you get to a point. I know that I have a highlighted spot here. So if you click on that, try again, excuse me, there's an electronic thing.
Sorry, I had problems with handwriting, so.
Okay, let me slowly go up. Element number 4, development permits.
Page 7.
Page 7, yeah. B, building site which constitutes all or portion of a designated internal lot on an approved DCD master plan, and which is subject to the final site plan approval, may be subdivided fee title conveyance by said individual internal lot upon approval by the town manager, provided that. So if you could just explain it to me, and where, you know, specifically on number 3, how that, well, I guess it's 1 through 7, how that actually works.
Okay, well, I sort of anticipated a question on that.
Is there something we can do so the audience can see it too? I guess not.
Or maybe if you pull that table.
Yeah, that table this way.
Okay, this is an example of that issue. Now, oh, I'm sorry.
Everybody on the board see that? Okay.
This is a development that consists of 3 phases, or 3 pods, 3 components, A, B, and C. The PUD master plan would apply to all of A, B, and C. Now, if there's a user here, which is an individual use, and the developer wants to sell this parcel, that's a lot that's internal to the PUD. And that section describes how this lot can be sold. It has to meet certain criteria, but it can be done by legal description and a boundary plat.
Okay, but as far as this being on the perimeter of the PUD, they would still have to meet all the setbacks and everything else.
Yeah,
because
yeah,
it's
that's right. There would be
truly internal piece.
There would be a master plan for the entire development and a master plat for the entire development. But once the master plan was approved, individual parcels could be sold off, but would still be subject to the master plan approval as well as all the conditions of approval. But this just allows the property owner the ability to sell phases or pods of the.
But that owner, then, of the new owner of C could not then come back and
He has to-
increase the density.
He had, true, he's subject to all of the conditions of the master plan approval. And, he cannot vary from those.
Under the current ULDCs, you cannot sell B and C. Is that correct?
Well, if you wanted to, if you had a commercially zoned parcel, you can subdivide it and sell it. And there's no prohibition for that.
It's a 1 acre.
So why do we need this sort of patent office creation here?
Because we want to commit this guy to the conditions of the overall master plan. Under the current zoning regulations, this guy could just do a commercial subdivision and sell off all the pieces with no plan.
Just have-
But in both cases, you're only concerned about buffering around the periphery and the other items.
Not density
no.
and everything else.
No,
Parking, that's it.
not in both cases. The buffering would go around the entire development. But any internal access, any easements, any development intensities that are approved as part of the master plan would run with the property.
Okay.
I thought that was controlled under the ULDCs.
No, because there's no provision for a master plan in the ULDC. There is no master plan period in the ULDC right now.
But you've given them permission for square footages of different components, as in an Okeechobee, for example.
Yeah, you have the floor area ratio.
And as to how they're distributing
And
that
setbacks.
Well, so
lot
that's-
advantageous.
That's just on whatever, the land use designation, which is allowed on that, you know, so commercial low, but it's not under this overlay master plan. Because the only thing, like for the Day property, for example, if that was approved, the next step would have been, zoning, and then the next step would have been, the master plan.
But when they came forward to you, they showed you how they were going to use those.
As an illustration, as a
It's just an
conceptual
illustration. So
illustration.
that's why, when I was serving on,
They turned around and considered-
land use for Palm Beach County, it would always burn me up when the land developers would come in with these great big beautiful pictures. That was no guarantee it was ever gonna be that.
Right, and sell to the next person.
And so, so that's why. All right, thank you, Jim.
Yeah. Did that answer your question?
Yes, it did, thank you. I think Veronica's suggestion is in order. I think that we need to have her come back with the modifications. Lawrence, do you concur with that? I would also like to suggest that in doing this is that you figure out a way to have the waivers not so loose. But, if it's waivers anything around density. And when it comes to the parking issue, I was on at City Place for the first time in a long time. And apparently someone from our neighborhood was parked there because it's an extended length pickup truck with a big trailer hitch on it. And they're sticking out this far, kind of the trailer hitch, and really, taking up a third of the travel lane for the person next to them. And those can be very dangerous. I walk by my own trailer hitch and bump my knee and, and I have an issue with that. That's just me.
Yeah.
So I think it's something that when we look at the length, not maybe the width, because I think, the width is like the street width, you must not have parking places bigger than what a lane has to be on a highway. When you're looking at this particular, in this area, you gotta realize we got a lot of long trucks out here with an extra that much on the end of it, and trailer hitches. and to, you know, maybe so that, I don't know whether the depth of the parking place is any bigger of a deal than having the width of the parking place.
And I wasn't necessarily suggesting that a waiver like that be granted. I was using it as an example because it was brought up at the last meeting. And I'm not suggesting that any waivers.
No, I understand what you mean.
Along the line be granted.
Because I know that the Wasatch Commons folks are,
Yeah.
are already built in smaller parking places. But we're not all driving smart cars either, so.
We don't all drive dualies either.
That's true, you need, I like what, you know, what Councilman Golson has said, is pickup trucks with training wheels. Yeah, they know how to.
I think Councilman Goldsmith had a question about what land uses this ordinance as written could apply to. It could apply to the multiple land use category. And as it's written now, it could apply to any non-residential land use category. That's the CL, CLO, recreational open space, conservation, or institutional. Now, that's something that certainly could change. I put that in there primarily as an item for discussion to see how the planning board feels about that, to give opportunities for other properly located land uses along Southern Boulevard to apply for the PUD approval as well.
I think something else that you need to look at if we decide as a board tonight to turn this back over to you and bring it back, is to come up with a size, 25 acres, 40 acres, something, you know, I think 50 acres, nothing wrong with 50 acres. You know, but in reality, there's not that many places. I know that there are certain spots along Southern Boulevard, should somebody choose to aggregate, you know, then it would probably work. Lawrence, yes, sir.
In the document, you talk about connecting citrus, right?
Tangerine.
Tangerine.
Well, I don't, there's not a specific reference in the ordinance about,
That was in the comp plan.
yeah, it's in the comp plan that talks about
And
that.
that was part of the list.
That was part of the list of policies in the comp plan that I say help support the creation of this document.
So, so let's say you achieve that connection, if that also connects down to Southern, would that allow access to something that is contiguous to the northern side of, is it Citrus?
Well,
What's the road?
Tangerine is.
Citrus is referred to as both.
Okay, so so the property that would be on the north side of that, but is somehow now connected down to Southern, you can run this east-west. Does that qualify for a PUD?
Well,
Because it's now connected to Southern.
yes, as long as a property that is the subject of a master plan approval has frontage on Southern, it could apply. And so
Frontage or connection to? I mean, if
It's got,
connected to,
well,
you've now extended this road east-west. And if something goes from that south and connects to Southern, would a parcel on the north side, south of Collecting Canal qualify?
as long as it's part of an overall master plan, which has frontage on Southern.
I think the key word there is frontage, but
Yeah, exactly.
when you look at the visioning process, and I'm fairly certain it's in the comp plan, is that north of Tangerine, actually north of Citrus, across the whole town, anything north of Citrus is going to be at a much lower density than south of Citrus. In other words,
Unless it's connected to Southern.
no, period.
It has a different land use.
It's, you know, yeah.
Which can be changed by a PUD.
No.
No, it can't. The farthest north, any new development coming up to Southern could go would be the Citrus,
Well,
which is the street just north of.
in order for a commercial PUD to extend north of Citrus, it would first have to be granted a commercial future land use category. And there are no properties that currently have that. And there's language in the comprehensive plan that could be used to deny that.
Mr. Chair, if I could just make one more comment.
Yes, may I have the comment, please?
Based on everything that
You
I'm
promised
hearing.
this is one more.
Yeah, it's always just one more. It seems to me that based on what I'm hearing from this board, that again, and Jim and I had this conversation for quite a few minutes. If we're trying to create a PUD designation, maybe we really only need to be looking at our mixed-use land use, because within your PD, within your mixed-use land use, you have different types of uses. And you could get a better product with that. And if the goal is just to affect the properties along Southern, how many properties along Southern are actually have a land use that are different than the mixed-use land use? Everything but the 2 on B Road, correct? Well, no, just, I guess, the one now.
Well, there are several properties along Southern Boulevard that have commercial.
Right, I get that, I understand that. So if we're saying that, there's 2 things. One is we're talking about putting a size on the PD. Right now, our mixed-use land use has that, it's 50 acres, so we're good with that. How do you determine, do you really want to have a 50-acre, someone have to go out and assemble 50 acres to do more commercial? I don't know, and I told you this before, I really felt uncomfortable adding any other land use category other than the mixed use land use, because generally when you do a PD, it's because you have a collection of different uses that you're addressing, and you can't do that through straight zoning, unless you have a mixed use zoning, which we obviously prefer an overlay. So I think I felt comfortable when I left your office. And I'm starting to feel a little uncomfortable again about taking this PD to go and apply it to properties along Southern Boulevard that are not mixed use.
Under your scenario, what if they start assembling north? So their southern part,
They
it's
can't.
part of the MOU, they assemble north, and then they come for a change on the whole mess.
No, that's not what I mean at all. What I'm suggesting is at this point in time, we're not ready to do a PD for any other land use designation than a mixed use land use. We have land uses in place for our commercial, we have land uses in place for our industrial. They're consistent with the zoning that's already in place. Why would we create another overlay when we really, again, and Jim and I talked about this, I don't see what the purpose is if you already have a land use and a zoning in place, other than to possibly get something that a developer can't get. Because I was under the understanding that they couldn't go for variances. I thought that's what, and I might have misunderstood what you said.
Yeah, there are provisions in the existing code to apply for variance.
So then why would we, and I apologize for misunderstanding that, then why would we allow them to go plan development? Why not just let them go in their straight zoning the way that they're allowed to now, and if they need a variance or a waiver, they can ask for it? What would be the benefit
Well,
if we're just talking about properties that are adjacent to Southern Boulevard? So
well, I guess the, in my mind, the real benefit of the PUD is the master plan.
Mhm.
So where you take a look at an entire development in the zoning process. Variances are more individually tailored and don't necessarily work its way into an overall master plan, in my mind.
Well, I have a different mind, no offense,
No,
but
no problem.
I do, again, I think if you're talking about, I have this, you know, let's say it's 25 acres of land, and I wanna come in and I've got this flat-out land use and my flat-out zoning, here's what I'm allowed to build, you're gonna come in as part of a site plan approval, correct? So essentially, that's your master plan, with exception of if it's my intention as the developer, and I want to get a bank that wants to come in. And that bank then said, the only way I'm gonna build here is if I own the land that my building is sitting on. So they could still do a subdivision, correct? Now, does the town have like a minor subdivision and a major subdivision procedure? Okay, so we don't. That is where you'd be able to tack on and make sure, you can't cut off access because now there's this old separate PCN number. You have to have the foundation planting around the building, you can't not do that. So again, I'm concerned that we're creating this zoning category to address deficiencies in the code, which we talked about when you and I met. So again, if the goal is to try to have better development on Southern Boulevard, in a form of a PD, I really, really believe that it should only apply to the mixed-use land use at this point.
Okay. Veronica, did you have a motion?
Well, I did, I made some notes, you know me. But I do want to comment on that, I think. This is a tough situation. We only have 2 sites that have commercial, I think, on Southern right now, other than the MLU.
No, we've got several.
We got commercial, well, 2 contiguous areas. One is commercial low, one is commercial low office. Is that, am I mistaken on that? Are there 2? There might be more than one parcel, but we have.
We have several parcels along the southern frontage.
Then I mean, my map must be out of date then, okay. Now, then if there are more than one, let's say there are 5 parcels contiguous that are, yeah, that's it. Okay, so they're together, they're contiguous, but they might be separate parcels, right? Okay. So, let's say they want to come in and develop independently of each other. It's my opinion that having them come in under a PUD together is going to result, assuming that the PUD ordinance is carefully crafted, could result in a better product than having 5 independent owners with 5 access to the street, with 5 scrawny little ficus trees being eaten by whitefly. You know, I think it's gonna be a better product. And I'd also like the town manager to weigh in on that. Do you see that as being a better product or not as a better product? If it were a PUD for contiguous properties?
Contiguous properties, yes, I think part of the problem is all our commercial on Southern is scattered. I mean, along the whole corridor, I think we have like, what, 12 total maybe? That have, and a lot of them unfortunately have, we discussed this at the council level, a lot of them have old county zoning, which technically, until they come in redevelopment, we really can't do anything with them. Until we get one of our zoning designations on the map right now, so it's very close to our designation, but we're kind of paralyzed because technically we're not the county, so we can't.
So if they're not contiguous, and I am not hearing any other reason provided as to why this should extend beyond the MLU, I'm inclined to agree with Grace, that let's just start with the MLU, bite off that hunk, and then sometime in the future, if we need to expand, we can do it. Let's start with the MLU. No, I'm proud of it. And I do have a motion if you want.
Okay, well, there's a motion.
Okay. Because I believe it's only fair to the staff to provide them some specific direction. I would like to defer this until such time as the staff can come back with some revisions to the PUD ordinance. And I would like to see included, the waivers are more restrictive and more defined. who the applicant can be. I can send this to you if you want, whatever. Who the applicant can be and the documents required to establish that. But if it's only MLU, I guess it doesn't make any difference, that's right. I would like to see the PUD ordinance with the preliminary application and final application provision. I think that makes for a cleaner progression of work. Now, where are they at? The comp plan is on its way for the MLU, am I correct on that?
Yeah, I think it's, we've already gotten that plan. The transmittal's been done.
The transmittal's been done.
Well, no, the two parcels on B Road have been approved for the MLU. The MLU parcel on the west side of B is the subject of the current land use plan amendment to take the MLU off and revert to RR5 for the college, and then 20 acres of commercial low on the corner. The parcel on the east side of the still is an approved MLU.
So what are we gonna end up with?
Another shopping center.
No, I mean, what's gonna be 50 acres?
The MLU on the east side is 90-some acres.
Okay. So, all right.
So if,
So none of what we do would affect the other parcels?
well, if we take, if we make this only relate to parcels with an MLU land use designation, it would only relate to one parcel. The east side would be.
But then when the county, when you shift from the county to you, then there'll be,
Well, that property doesn't have the problem, it's most of the other properties.
With the county zoning.
Yeah, the county zone.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
There's some- there's some-
PD isn't gonna change that though.
No, there are some parcels on Southern Boulevard that have a CG zoning designation, which was the old county designation, and the town does not have a CG designation.
and that'll switch to the MOU, which will.
No.
What do they see?
Well, Linda,
Commercial general.
I would propose in my motion also to include a limitation on the amendment approval by administratively. I would like to see all of the ambiguity in some of the sections qualified or quantified. A minimum size, we've already discussed that.
It's only the MLU.
Yeah, it's only the MLU, I guess the thing. But in case some other people come in who want to do MLU. Okay, then we're gonna restrict it to MLU if this passes. It's restricted to Southern Boulevard frontage, which I guess is not, okay, all right. And specific and much more extensive application requirements, timelines for all of the phasing and completion.
Okay, well, those probably would be included as conditions, but we can put.
But we have to put something in
the
there
conditions
that allows them to establish that as a
Timing
condition.
shall be established.
Right, okay. And I put down here requirements for the World Vista and the other things. Can we put them in as requirements just to encourage? I mean, I know that's out of the comp plan, but maybe put something a little more solid in there.
Maybe shall, you shall.
Yeah, well, there's language in the ULDC now about developing consistent with the World Vista guidelines.
Just under general provisions?
So we can put it in, yeah, we can put it in here too.
And I think there should be and this is an attorney's question, somewhere in there for an appeal of town manager decisions. I'd like to see the purpose and intent sections expanded. Definitive performance standards. A process for the waivers and a documentation that's required to accept an application for waivers.
During the Sundays?
I think it would be better to, just to make the motion very, very simple, is that we would move to. Okay, Veronica makes a motion to defer, Laurel seconds. Any more discussion by the board?
But,
If I
And-
may-
but I just want to make sure though, I'd like to see these things in there.
And with the proviso that these amendments, I mean, these conditions as outlined by Veronica.
Chair, for the record, and I have to say a general list, but this would be a non-inclusive list, it'd be including but not limited
Limited
to.
to.
That's fine.
And it would be based on the totality of all items presented.
Although after all that, I'm not sure anybody would want to spend their time. But that's fine.
Yeah.
Through the chair, can you tell me who seconded that?
Lawrence
Okay,
Horning.
okay, thank you.
Okay. So, all those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, say nay. Okay, so the motion passed unanimously. So I guess this sort of makes it that we don't need to look at A5B, would that be correct?
No, we still need to.
Okay, all right. Don't look at 5B. All right.
Okay, item 5B is a proposed moratorium
Oh, that's more, I'm sorry.
ordinance. At its April 17th meeting, the town council authorized moratorium on the processing and review of land use map and text amendments to the comprehensive plan effective as of that date.
Would you speak up, please, sir?
Okay. Yeah, I think I need one. As a moratorium is considered a land development regulation in itself, it requires review at a public hearing and a recommendation by the P and Z board. The ordinance specifically exempts any applications that are currently in process as of April 17th, which include the two Simon property amendments, 12-1 and 2, one of which is related to taking the multiple land use designation off of the property and assigning commercial lower to the corner. And the other one, 12-2, are the special policies that relate to the future development of the property for state college campus. The purpose of the moratorium is to give the town time to review the comprehensive plan and proceed with any amendments necessary to better reflect the town's rural character. Any such amendments generated by the town during that time period, the moratorium extends to November 30th. Any amendments generated by the town during that time period are also exempt from the moratorium. As I said, the moratorium will run until November 30th unless extended by ordinance.
Could you restate that about the application during?
The town, the reason for the moratorium is to give the town.
Right, I understand that, but they,
Okay.
you said something about making an
Any
application.
any amendments that result from that town review are exempt from the moratorium. And any other applications such as rezoning applications, site plan applications are not subject to the moratorium. Staff recommends approval of the draft ordinance as included in the agenda package.
Okay, we don't have any comment cards on this, correct, Steve? Okay. We have one.
Yes, we do.
State your name for the record, please, address.
Nina Corning, E Road. Couple questions. I understand why the properties that are
affirmatively asking for changes on B Road where they are exempt because they've started their process. When the town is, the town initiated amendments are exempt, town will continue to process other development applications such as rezonings and site plans. It almost seems like it's wiping itself out, the moratorium. I mean, I understand there's some conflicts with the county zoning, is that why that's in there? Can you explain to me how that's actually keeping people from rezoning right now while we are trying to tighten up the comp plan that's supposedly weak if we are continuing to allow rezoning? No. Just not understanding this language like well enough.
Well, all I can tell you on that is that's what the council directed. A moratorium on land use plan amendments that were not in process or amendments generated by the review of the comprehensive plan are the only items subject to the moratorium. And that's what staff was directed to do by the council.
So it wasn't to basically prevent continuous applications on Okeechobee Valley. I mean,
Well, I mean,
maybe I'm not understanding the language properly.
well, no land use plan amendments that are not currently in process can be submitted, period, anywhere. So yes, that would cover Okeechobee.
So I'm just not understanding this last sentence properly, then it's confusing me.
Okay, coming back to the board, is there any discussion on this? Veronica?
This is a question for the town's attorney. Do we have to be any more specific as to what we're going to study or how we're going to go about it or anything like that?
I mean, the town council is quite specific as far as what they were looking for in the context of the moratorium. If the board would like to make any other recommendations, we would only suggest that they come by way of a separate motion apart from the ordinance itself.
But the ordinance itself isn't very explicit.
But it's explicit to the extent that it's limited to land use plan amendments, which was within the scope of what the direction was.
Right, and my question to you is, it's specific enough as
Yes.
to what we're going to do?
It is,
Okay.
yes.
Okay, pass it.
Legal muster, correct.
Now, what rights does the Day property have? Are they limited as to when they can come back for an amendment, or the fact that they've already submitted one, although it's been denied? Do they have any kind of vested rights?
If the initial submittal has been denied, it would be a new application, would be subject to the moratorium.
So it's, okay, I just want to clarify that. Okay, no, that's all my questions.
All right. Any other questions on the board?
Oh, I wanted
No,
to
you
clarify,
can't,
I wanted to clarify one thing. And correct me if I'm wrong, Jim. The reason we're exempting ourselves is if we wanted to make some changes to the comp plan and we didn't exempt ourselves, we could not file those changes until the moratorium was over, and then everyone else could file theirs as well, and we might not have controls in place that we might have put in as a result of the changes. Am I correct on
I
that?
think that's a very astute conclusion, yes.
Now, is there something, maybe town management knows the answer on this, is there any charrettes or workshops planned for looking at the comp plan? Is there any consultants been hired? What's anything looking?
Nothing that I'm aware of right now. I think this may be the first step that town council is taking in terms of establishing a future game plan as to where they want to go with this.
Okay.
I think we'll probably get into it more.
The member's gonna be here pretty soon.
Yeah.
Lawrence?
Section 3, the exceptions, amendments to the town comprehensive plan initiated by the town. Is there anything that you're aware of that's
think that that was put in there to give the town the opportunity to make amendments to the comprehensive plan based on its review that's going to be undertaken during the moratorium period.
Things like, that have been discussed by the mayor and other folks have been why do we have the same density on Okeechobee as we have on Southern? If we're trying to encourage density to be on Southern, so maybe the appropriate density would be, instead of 0.1 FAR, maybe 0.05 FAR for a commercial low, commercial low office. So anyway, that's what
I
we
think-
answered about.
I think the answer to your question really lies in the third whereas on page 2.
Enhance the consistency, historical vision.
Yeah, I think that's what that item was referring to, is when the town goes through this exercise and identifies comprehensive plan amendments that implement this whereas, they will have the ability to start to file applications during the moratorium period.
And the second whereas and the sixth one also.
Okay, I would like to have someone put a motion forward.
I would make a motion that we recommend adoption of the ordinance.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Okay, we have a motion made by Veronica and a second by Grace. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? All opposed? Motion passes. Okay. All right, I'd like to have a motion for adjournment, although we don't need one. Thank you, everybody, for coming out tonight, and we're done for 15. Thank you, Jen, did a good job. I'll walk flies in the meeting.
It must be great that I can talk live.
Well, I think I'm gonna.
Trust me, there's only a couple of people in this room that would just have it.
Okay. Yeah.
Don't come here. Always look at the other side. Exactly, right? Especially this time of night. Exactly.
This is never dull.
Oh my gosh, wasn't that amazing? That was a fantastic
You might want to do the next couple of pages, huh?
Take care, Jack.
Nice to you. Yeah, likewise. Take care.
All right.
Thank you. Good night.
Good night, guys.
Good night. Take care. Gentlemen, good night.